I'm Jim. I'm going to talk to you today about a better way to air up off-road tires, and that's the power tank. We don't like to air up tires. We think it's tedious and boring, but it's kind of like brushing your teeth. You got to do it, although not twice a day. So we have a very fine compressor, an ARB twin compressor we used for many months. It worked fine, and it still works fine, but it's noisy, it's slow, and it requires electricity. So we tried a power tank and we're very happy with it. Power tank is nothing other than a cylinder compressed CO2. It has a regulator and it has a gauge and it has a hose. By the way, if you stick around to the end of the video, I'm going to tell you about an accessory that you really should buy with the power tank, which doesn't come with it, and also something that you should not do when you use the power tank, which I see people do with some regularity, and it's a big mistake. The power tank is fast, quiet, requires no electricity, and also has a lot fewer moving parts than a compressor. I'm no engineer, but I figure fewer moving parts, simpler, probably more reliable. But again, ARB is a great company. Our compressor has worked well, but just makes sense to me. I like fewer moving parts. The power tank is fast. We can air up our 37-inch tires 40 to 50 seconds. It depends on where you start and where you end. We usually air down to 15 for gnarly trails, and trails not so gnarly, maybe 20 or 18. We usually air up to about 35, and like I said, 40 to 50 seconds. That's really fast. It's also quiet. You can hear the CO2. That's it. It's just hissing. It's really nice. Requires no electricity, so it doesn't stress your battery and your alternator. And if you want to, you can leave your Jeep off because you don't have to run the Jeep, which you should do, as you probably know, when you're running a compressor, so that the alternator can continue to charge the battery so you don't overstress the battery, possibly kill the battery. We get maybe 14, 15, 16 fills out of one CO2 canister, and that is a negative about the CO2. Obviously, with a compressor, you have an unlimited amount of air. You're not going to run out of air. But with a CO2 canister, you're going to run out. And it's a little hard to tell exactly how much how much CO2 is in the cylinder. There's no gauge for that. If you really want to know, you weigh it before and you weigh it after. In other words, our tank weighs about 18.5 pounds. These are 10-pound tanks, so you get it like 28 and a half. If you really want to know how much CO2 you have left, you basically weigh it and you just do, simple mathematical calculation. But of course, that requires taking it out of the bracket and putting it on a scale. It's not worth it. We just have a little chart and we just keep track of how many tires, and usually like 14, 15 tires. And one reason we have two of these is because you never really know when it's going to run out. It's approximation, but so our last trail, which we did a wonderful rock garden on, it's up on the channel. I was filling the tires at the end, and after like 3.5 tires, the tank was empty. Okay, fine. I did use the compressor there to do the last, like, I don't know, it's like 10 pounds of the tire, and that was fine. So another disadvantage, obviously, is what happens when it's empty. You got to take it to get it filled. Okay, you can't fill it at home. You have to find some place to get it filled. Kind of a pain because you got to drive there. We go to the shop that built up this Jeep, very fine shop in Phoenix, and they fill it for a double sawbuck, 20 bucks. All right, so we try to wait till we get both tanks drained, and then we go there. One other disadvantage, by the way, as you can see, is that they do take up storage space. Okay, cost. You're going to spend more dough on a power tank than you're going to spend on a compressor. Now, we have an ARB twin. We have it installed on the passenger seat, so that saves space, but we couldn't DIY it, so we had to have the shop do it. And by the time we paid for all of that, the mounting hardware, obviously the tank, the labor to get it installed, it was pretty close to the price of a power tank. But again, if you use a single compressor and it's portable, that one that you just lift up the hood and attach the battery terminals, because ours is hardwired, it's going to be less dough. So those are the advantages and the disadvantages. You decide what to do. It's your off-road vehicle. It's your choice. Now, if you decide to buy the power tank, there is an accessory that we didn't get initially, but then we did purchase it. So here's the hose and the gauge which comes with it. This little, I think it's called a pigtail. It adds a little bit of length to it, because especially when you use it for the first fill, and you got to reach all the way around to the passenger side front tire, which is advised because this can get very cold and it can shrink a bit. So you want to do your farthest tire first. It's a bit of a stretch. So we basically got the little, I think it's called a pigtail. That's really good. Okay. So I would get that accessory. It's not expensive. If you're going to shell out for the power tank, get the accessory. So when you air up with a compressor, a lot of people use, a hose contraption. Easy Flate. This is an Easy Flate. I think there's more Flate. There's a whole bunch of them. They all work basically the same. Okay. I've seen people use this with a power tank. It's really a bad idea because you waste a lot of air, because you got to get air. It'll fill the hose, and then, as you know, when you detach it, there's all this air in the hose that basically you lose. It doesn't go back in the tank. Also, setting it up takes a bit of time. So definitely don't use this with a power tank. It's not a good idea. All right, so make your choice, do whatever you want, but in any event, now get out there and wheel with or without a power tank.